Alright, so Unit 10 practice test. State whether their statements are true or false. This first one right here, A, is going to be false. And that's because just because something is a segment bisector does not mean that it has to be perpendicular. So there's my counterexample. There's a bisector that is not perpendicular. Remember, perpendicular means 90 degrees. This one is actually a true statement, because if it has three congruent sides and angles, it's equilateral. And this one is a false statement, because the two angles that could be complementary but are not equal, you could have 30 and 60. Or any combination of them. That's my cat. For number 2, if I study for the test, then I will get higher grades. We underline and we circle. Underline the hypothesis, because that always comes after the word if. Circle the last part. Okay. 3, identify the converse of the following statement. If the angle is 90, so there's our hypothesis. Here's our conclusion. So all we have to do is switch it. So this needs to come first. This will come second. This answer is A. Okay, next bit. Okay, so which statements are biconditional? So we have the hypothesis, the conclusion, and then we only have to write if and only if in there. So two angles have the same measure. If and only if they are congruent, B would work. It's okay if you write it backwards too, if two angles are congruent, or two angles are congruent if and only if they have the same measure. So B and C are acceptable for this one. For 5, this is the symmetric property. The symmetric property is backwards. Substitution says something like if x equals 3, then 2x plus 3 equals 2 times 3 plus 3. Hey, no, get away. Jerk. She was eating my cereal. So we're plugging in 3 for x in this case. So that's the substitution property. Reflexive property would be like if angle A is equal to angle A. Like that's anything equals itself. And then the transitive property is the whole if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, therefore A is equal to C. That's the transitive property. Yep. So the biconditional, what are the two that make it up? And because my handwriting is awful when it comes to this, I'm going to type it instead. And hopefully this works okay. So the first one is going to be if a triangle is isosceles, then it has two congruent sides. So again, we are just saying if the first part, then the second part. We also get a second statement out of this. Say if a triangle has two congruent sides, then it is isosceles. Alright. So for this next part, to solve this, we need to distribute. So this is 5x minus 10 plus 8 equals 3. Negative 3, sorry. And then we're going to combine like terms. Then we add 2 to both sides. And then our last step is to divide. So again, when we list this stuff out, our first step to go from step 1 to step 2 is we use the distributive property. Then our next one after that was to use the combine like terms. After that, we added 2 to both sides, so we use the addition property. Then it used to say 5 times x, now it just says 5x. We used the division property. Okay, you do need to know all the properties for the test. Okay, next one. It's a little awkward, but whatever. Okay, do this. Alright, that'll do. So number 1, 1 equals 2. That reason is always going to be given. We know it's given because that's what it says. Given 1 equals 2. Our next part, angle 2 and angle 4. There's angle 2 and there's angle 4. Those two are equal because they're vertical angles. So you just write vertical angles. Actually, you know what? Vertical angles are congruent. You could also say equal. Both are okay. For number 3, we need to follow the transitive property. It says if 1 is equal to 2 and 2 is equal to 4, therefore angle 1 is equal to angle 4 by the transitive property, or they're congruent. Next, angle 1 is equal to angle 3 because those are also vertical angles. They are across from each other, so angle 1 and angle 3 are right there. And the last part is what we're trying to prove. You always put that as the last statement, because after you prove what you're trying to prove, why would you keep going? And so this used to say angle 1 equals angle 4. Okay, so see how the 4 is down there? It used to say angle 1, now it says angle 3, and that's because angle 1 equals angle 3. So I would actually accept 2 separate answers here. I would accept the substitution property. I would also accept the transitive property. Both of them are okay. Next. Okay, so for this one, you'll notice that these two make a straight line. Since they make a straight line, they add to 180 degrees. That answer is B. And for this one, you'll notice that these guys are vertical angles, and vertical angles are equal. So 5x is equal to 2x plus 18. We're going to subtract 2x from both sides to get 3x is equal to 18. And we divide 3 on both sides to get x is equal to 6. So there's our first answer. LMD goes from L to M to D. That's this angle right here. That guy. So that is 5 times 6, which is 30 degrees. Okay. And then to follow it up, they're asking for LMH, which is this angle here. Everywhere in this space. Okay. So to solve for that, notice that DML and LMH, those guys make a straight line. Since they make a straight line, you just do 180 minus 30 to get 150 degrees. Okay, next. It says these guys are supplementary. This angle and this angle. So you write 3x minus 7 plus 2x plus 12 equals 180. Combine like terms to get 5x plus 5 equals 180. The opposite of plus 5 is minus 5, so we subtract 5 from both sides. And therefore 5x is equal to 175. And we divide by 5 on both sides to get x equals 35. Okay. So we're not quite done because they didn't ask us to find x, they asked us for angle y and angle z. So 3 times 35 minus 7, that's equal to 98. And then z was 2 times 35 plus 12, and that comes out to 82. You can check your answer by adding them together and making sure that they equal to 180. So these guys are our answers. And we plug them back into the original problems. So next one is very similar, except it's with complementary angles. Complementary angles add to 90 degrees. So it's going to be 5x minus 3 plus 2x plus 30 equals 90 degrees. Combine like terms to get 7x plus 27 equals 90. Subtract 27 on both sides to get 7x equals 63. And divide both sides by 7 to get x equals 9. After you get 9, make sure you plug it back in because they're asking for angle C. So that's 5 times 9 minus 3, which is 42 degrees for angle C. And then 2 times 9 plus 30, which comes out to 48 for angle D. Notice that they add to 90 degrees, just like they said they should. Okay. Next, we got this problem. We have to read carefully. This says B is, so you're going to write B, and the math symbol for is equals 5 times, so 5 times the measure of its supplement A, so B equals 5A. It also said that word supplement, which means that B and A together should add to 180 degrees, because that's what supplementary means. Now notice we have B and 5A. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this B out, and I'm going to replace it with 5A. That's called the substitution property. 5a plus a would be 6a, so 6a is equal to 180. And then divide both sides by 6 to get a equals 30. So b is equal to 5 times 30 for 150 degrees. Done. Okay, the only thing we have left to do is just go over the definitions. So I'm just going to go over them kind of fast. Okay. An if-then statement is a conditional statement. That is C. When you exchange the hypothesis and conclusion, that is called the converse, G. If and only if, those are the keywords for a biconditional, H. The then part is the conclusion. A line, segment, or ray that is perpendicular to the segment at its midpoint. That would be a perpendicular bisector. Example that shows a statement is incorrect is called a counterexample. A definition is good if it can be written as a biconditional, so that is a good definition, I. The if part is the hypothesis, and true or false would be a truth value, because a truth value could be either true or false. Politicians would argue against that one. Okay, next part. If they equal the same thing, then that is the reflexive property. If we're dividing on both sides, remember fraction is a fancy way to say divide, that is the division property. If you're subtracting the same thing from both sides, again, look, see that there's the subtraction signs. That's the subtraction property. If we are adding the same thing to both sides, that's the addition property. We are adding line segments, so that is segment addition, which is R. A equals B, B equals A, that is the symmetric property. A equals B, B equals C, A equals C, that is the transitive property. A can replace B. Replacement would be substitution, M. Two angles that have a sum of 90 degrees, that is complementary, P. Okay. And then we've got a few more. Let's see, how long is this video already? 15 minutes? Eh. Okay, so F is the midpoint. Oh, that's just a midpoint. Two angles whose sum is 180, those are supplementary angles. Multiplying the same thing on both sides would be the multiplication property. We are literally adding angles, that's angle addition. This one down here says 1, 2, 3, 4. Behind all this, this is vertical angles. And if congruent segments, this is congruent segments, then their measures are equal. Alright, good luck studying. See you tomorrow.